If you know who Winston is, tell me something about the book he's from in the comments below. You think he really did see five fingers or four? If you don't know what I'm talking about, it just proves the miseducation you've received if American public schools taught you.
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
4.
And if the party says there are not 4, but 5, then how many?
5.
You're lying.
It really should be required reading. It could have saved our constitutional republic. I'll introduce Winston at the end of this video. There's a question I've had, and it has to do with this.
A is for activist, F is for feminism, L is for LGBTQ, R is for radical, T is for trans, X is for Malcolm X, and Z is for Zapatista.
These books are being checked out in our public libraries and taught in our public schools. In the book, Not My Idea, a book about whiteness, white children are being taught they are inherently oppressive and racist. Black children are being taught the same thing about white children, adding to the mix the doctrine that they are inherently oppressed because of their skin color. America is the source of evil in the world. LGBTQ flag at the White House, BLM, Antifa. 5 years ago, a Gallup poll found that 51% of Americans aged 18 to 29 have a positive view of socialism, where only 45% had a positive view of capitalism. You think it's gotten better or worse since then? Unless something changes, socialism, communism, fascism are all going to be voted in by a bunch of brainwashed kids, the result of our public school system. And I'm not talking about colleges and universities. America's children are being indoctrinated to see Marxism as a good thing, a necessary thing, an ideology not just worth voting for, but fighting for.
R is for radical.
In this video series, I'm going to showcase the symptoms of what's wrong with our country's education system, help you diagnose the contributors that made today's education indoctrination camps possible, the prognosis if this continues, and the prescription to set things right. This North Korean defector believes our elite schools are even worse than North Korea.
In Colombia, the first class begins with introducing your pronouns. And there are more than 1,000 pronouns right now. So instead of you trying to remember you as a person, I have to remember your pronoun. If I don't remember it correctly, I can be a bigot. And I can be threatening to you emotionally.
I just want to repeat for our audience that this is at Columbia, one of the top universities in an Ivy League school, where you would think that they're producing future leaders, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you are exposed to.
Yeah, they were in a way hating white men, the Western civilization, more intensely than North Koreans do at this point.
Really?
Yes, at some point I was thinking, am I in North Korea or am I in America, right? What an irony, like I escaped that country, now ended up in this country where I have to intensely hate Americans, right? Intensely hate everything about the Western democracy. That's what they do at Columbia.
This is what they're being taught.
Yeah.
I really wish you would have had better professors. You deserve them.
No, thank you for everything you do. Seriously, doctors. It's been, you have no idea how it touches so many.
Our elite Ivy League schools turning out woke progressive protesters is not a bug, but a feature. And these universities aren't even the place where the indoctrination begins. Kindergarten is the starting point for their education, quote unquote. Freshman year, students show up to college already fully indoctrinated unless they were homeschooled. But we need not get into the statistics of conservative Christian parents raising their children in the church with good morals and patriotic loyalty, only to discover their children have come home America-hating atheistic socialists. How did we get to a place where the younger generations are voting for socialism? After 16,000 hours of public education, our kids graduate from government schools that our tax dollars paid for, hating America. They end up rejecting religion and believe U.S. history has been a lie. Each year, more tax dollars go towards schools, but our children can barely read and write, let alone reason. Our children lack purpose, meaning, and calling, and are more consumed with race, gender, and activism than anything else. Their moral compass has been realigned, broken, and pointing everywhere but true north. My name is Jack Mumford. My goal with this channel is to help you see the tipping points in culture, navigate politics, and chart course correction. I earned my doctorate in Christian apologetics and hold a graduate degree in the same field. Over the course of my formal education, I have amassed an impressive library and learned how to investigate. How does this benefit you? As a doctor in apologetics, I have learned how to research, write, argue, and evaluate opposing positions and ideologies.
The best way to teach people critical thinking is to teach them to write, because there's no difference between that and thinking. You need to learn to think, because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake, and those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly.
I've publicly debated, written for magazines, and am close to publishing my first book with the daily apologist, Dr. Dean Meadows, called Losing Our Minds, Teaching Christians How to Think in Unthinkable Times. In my professional life, I've pastored for almost 20 years in Washington State, California, and presently in North Carolina. Come with me as we pull the strings that unravel the tapestry, hiding the truth in our culture. In this video series, you're gonna learn how Marxism has infiltrated the American public school system and what we can do to stop it. Early in 2019, my second oldest son came home from school to tell us the results of a survey he took in class. He was so excited to share that his greatest strength was social justice warrior. He was in second grade. Piquing our curiosity, we asked him what social justice warrior meant, to which he told us he likes to help people. My children's school was training them to become political activists, and our tax dollars were being used to subsidize revolution. This started us on an investigation into what our school was teaching the children, and it was terrifying. We found out that the kindergarten teachers were instructed to teach 5-year-olds that their parents and doctors took a best guess at what they thought their gender was when they were born, but that it was up to the child to decide if they felt more like a boy or a girl that day. They followed that up with a party complete with cupcakes and ribbons for any child who identified as the opposite gender than their parents assigned them.
It is a sickness of the highest order.
What 5-year-old doesn't want a party with cupcakes? They'd tell you they were a dinosaur or a kitty for free, throwing a cupcake with sprinkles. I'm whatever you want me to be. In disbelief, we started researching to see if it was true. And much to our dismay, it was actually worse than what we thought. And I'm not going to get into what we discovered, because what they are teaching in the public schools to underage children is not safe to share publicly with adults on YouTube. I was a pastor in Orange County, California from 2014 until April of 2021. I have stories that would curl your hair of the strange and terrifying things we experienced from March 2020 until we left. Society was collapsing. Leading up to our departure from California in 2021, we fought hard in the public school system. We taught parents what the schools were teaching our children, organized speakers and lawyers to address these issues at the school district board meetings. Here's a clip of a speech I gave in March of 2019 leading up to this catastrophe.
President Laird, Superintendent Franklin, and members of the board. My name is Jack Mumford. I'm the father of 4 children in the Tustin School District. I want to thank you for representing our local community in your service to Tustin, its families, and children. I'm speaking to you tonight about the Healthy Youth Act curriculum framework set to be adopted by the California State Education Board in May of this year. One goal of the framework curriculum is to lessen and eliminate the effects of bullying and discrimination in the schools of California, an admirable goal everyone in this room would agree on. Here are some concerns I have about the curriculum, however. According to the proposed framework, gender norms of biological male and biological female from birth is to be challenged. This is a quote from the framework instructing teachers to discuss gender with kindergartners by exploring gender stereotypes and asking open-ended questions such as what are preferred colors, toys, and activities for boys/girls, and then challenging stereotypes if presented. As a dad with 3 boys and 1 girl, I want my children to feel comfortable pursuing a career regardless of gender stereotypes. But the curriculum is not teaching children to challenge stereotypes for noble purposes. The framework's heroes are not Joan of Arc or Amelia Earhart, but rather Bruce Jenner. The curriculum is idolizing transgenderism to teach, according to page 43 of chapter 3 of the framework, that identifying as transgender, that their gender identity is different from their sex assigned at birth, or feeling uncomfortable with identifying with their sex assigned at birth, are all viable and admirable options is medically, psychologically, biologically, and morally bankrupt. Paul McHugh, former chief of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, concluded in reviewing numerous scientific studies that transgenderism is a mental disorder. He went further by saying that to treat transgenderism as a civil rights matter is to collaborate with and promote a mental disorder. It is immoral to normalize a mental illness for the individual suffering, and even worse, to put in the minds of children that they too can have a mental disorder. Dr. Richard Karate, professor of psychiatry at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, stated, transgenderism would refute the natural laws of biology. On the next page of that same chapter, the framework instructs teachers to invite transgender individuals to present to the class of kindergartners on busting myths and being role models for defying traditional stereotypes. This is outrageous. Biological gender is not a stereotype, but a scientific fact. The curriculum is not defying traditional stereotypes, but defying rules of logic and science. Another suggested book to help teachers in be. In this book, first graders learn about the 15 genders: trans, genderqueer, non-binary, gender fluid, transgender, gender neutral, agender, neutrois, the consequences of confusing these children, undermining scientific fact, and forcing teachers in your district to go against the objective reality that humans cannot change their biology will be catastrophic. To tell a child suffering from an eating disorder like bulimia or anorexia that they are right, their mental state does not match their physical state is malpractice in a medical physician's office and child abuse in the home. Why is transgenderism being thrust upon our children in the public school, not as something to be treated, but something to celebrate and affirm when a similar condition of an eating disorder is approached with concern and treatment? A person who wants to deny opposite sex hormones or attempt to add opposite sex body parts through superficial surgery is clearly suffering from a mental disorder. And our State Board of Education wants to normalize and proliferate this mental disorder. I'm standing here today to plead with you to reject the framework, the medically, psychologically, biologically inaccurate transgender ideology it seeks to normalize and indoctrinate our precious children with. To accomplish our goal of raising up skilled, knowledgeable, and beneficial members of society, all you need to do is create an atmosphere of mutual respect, not indoctrination. If you agree with me, please stand. Thank you.
This video was shared over 3,400 times with hundreds of thousands of views before Facebook took it down. Why is our public school system concerned with social justice and gender confusion instead of reading, writing, and arithmetic? Here's what I discovered. Firstly, there was a plot that was uncovered in 1961 by an FBI agent that showed communists were taking concerted efforts to transform America into a communist country. Social justice and the new political upheaval are the results of this successful military strategy. Secondarily, there's a lot of money in the transgender business, from pharmaceutical aid, hospital visits, specialized doctors, drugs, surgeries, insurance, psychological treatment, new apparel inventions. Thirdly, a dystopian nightmare where the state controls procreation is closer to being realized. Transgenders cannot procreate if they've gone through hormone therapy and have had reproductive dismemberment and genitalia mutilation surgeries. Welcome to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Homosexual relationships and transgenderism do not produce offspring. Since they can't produce offspring naturally, they seek ways to reproduce the only way available to them, ideologically. The only way they can reproduce is through indoctrinating children, born of natural relationships between a man and a woman. According to the UCLA School of Law's Williams Institute, in the last 5 years, teenagers who identify as transgender have doubled. It's largely a social contagion. You're so brave. You go, Queen. You've been duped by the establishment, the Marxists, the psychiatrists, transition doctors, surgeons, insurance companies, and pharmaceutical industry. George Orwell wrote 1984, a book about a dystopian future where the state, Big Brother, controls language, thoughts, and actions of its citizens. Near the end of the book, Winston gets caught and tortured to admit that he sees 4 fingers held in front of him as 5. A lie that Winston cannot agree to at first. After much pain and suffering, Winston desires to see 4 fingers as 5 because the state tells him what truth is, even if that truth is a lie. As the torturer presses him further, Winston finally admits that he sees 5, but Big Brother can't have people lying to save their skin. No, Winston must actually see 5 fingers. Don't assume someone's pronouns until the state tells you what you can and cannot say. My wife and I saw the writing on the wall in California with their new pushes to castrate and de-breast our children. Who would our children grow up to be friends with? Who would they date with the mind virus the schools were indoctrinating them with? What would ministry look like as the decades march on and I counsel boys who used to be girls, girls who used to be cats? We left California for the future of our children and the future of our nation. Here's the post I made explaining our departure. Joining the mass exodus. Broke the news to the church I've pastored for almost 7 years that we were leaving California. Many tears and many telling us we're doing the right thing. We have 4 young ones. We fought the transgenderism ideology that was introduced to our elementary schools, beginning in kindergarten, and lost. We kept our church open in spite of societal, legal, and social pressure to close our doors. Most of our friends, many in our church, and a number of neighbors have moved out of state. Taxes, the destruction of the middle class, and small business owners, horrific, self-interested, hypocritical, tyrannical government leaders, Marxism, socialism, insane cost of living, rampant homelessness. Kid you not, had someone bathe with our hose on the church patio in broad daylight, someone else poop on the church doorstep about a month apart. Traffic, wildfires, cancel culture, crime, threats to free speech, threats to Second Amendment rights, the list goes on. Leave. Get out while you can and understand the conservative migration from this beautiful state will only lessen the pool of voters who could have voted the liberal Dems out. This ship is sinking. We came to California as missionaries. We are leaving as refugees. North Carolina, here we come. We loved California. The beaches, the theme parks, the weather, our people. Not all people, but our people. But we had to leave. There's a rot in our country that began in our public schools and made its way to the ballot box. If you want to know how it was done, click on the next video as we diagnose the disease in our education system.